Recording. Let's start. Count of 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Central Coast Local Planning Panel. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today and the ancient culture which they are part. I'd also like to pay respects to elders past and present. The panel meetings for this meeting today are myself, Jason Perica, as Chair appointed by the State, Sue Francis and Stephen Leithley, who are experts appointed by the Council, and Jeff Mitchell, a community member appointed by the Council. The public meeting is being recorded, as you probably would have gathered from the pre-discussion, and webcast, and you need to bear that in mind when you're choosing what you say. Please do not seek to denigrate others in an attempt to win a perceived argument. It's not a town hall debate, it's not a court. And I don't want to be chairing a meeting where slanderous comments are made of others. That includes council staff, other speakers, the panel, or people who aren't here. Other than the recording that's happening now and going to be put on council's website, there's to be no other recording or filming this meeting unless the prior permission of the panel has been obtained, which hasn't been sought nor obtained. Please, as a courtesy, just turn your electronic devices on silent and mute your Zoom when not addressing the panel. And it'll be appreciated if courtesy and respect can be observed throughout the meeting. We don't have any apologies. I think for the 4 items, there's been one minor discretionary disclosure made by one of the panel members, Sue Francis. So I might ask Sue to briefly outline the nature of that discretionary disclosure.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sue Francis here. I just needed to make a discretionary disclosure because I'm reading the submissions in relation to this matter. The applicant for 15 Lynette Crescent, Ms. Furtado, referencing that her husband was going to speak to the meeting, I realised that I know Mr. Furtado, him being an employee of an associated company. Now, but I have to say that I have never had any financial, operational, managerial involvement in the company to which he worked, nor in relation to Mr. Furtado himself, and that Mr. Furtado left the associated company some nearly 2 years ago. So I mentioned this purely for abundant transparency, but I do not believe I've got any conflict.
Thanks, Ms. Francis. I'm happy to accept that explanation, discretionary disclosure. Otherwise, there's been no other declarations of interest. At this meeting, hopefully it won't come as any surprise that we're considering the determination in the public session of 3 development applications as published in the business papers being for sites at 51 Peel Street, Toukley, 15 Lynette Crescent, East Gosford, and 125 to 135 Tuggerah Parade, Long Jetty. I can advise you the panel's been provided with the assessment reports prepared by council staff. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that. This is those reports and recommendations we're considering today. We've also been provided access to public submissions and information associated with the applications. Council staff have briefed the panel prior to the meeting, and individual panel members have undertaken site visits as deemed necessary and noting COVID restrictions. There's also been some late correspondence received in relation to a couple of the items. So I might just run through who we have registered to speak, and hopefully you're all here. And the purpose for this is to let you know who I'm expecting to hear from. And then if you believe you've registered to speak or have a burning desire to address us, let me know at the end of that. The speakers we have for the first item in Peel Street, Toukley, are Mark Sloan, Karen Kelly, David Harris MP, Sandra Pizaridis, and Charles Ahadi for the applicant. Lastly, and then for Lynette Crescent, we have Clayton Vitano on behalf of the applicant, and no speakers for the third item. Can I just pause and check with all the people that are in with us that there's no one I've missed out? Okay, good. I'll take silence as acceptance. Just in case you're talking to the screen and I can't hear, I didn't hear anybody, so there might be someone who's on mute who's talking that I can't hear. But I won't extend that opportunity to speak afterwards. You don't have the luxury of listening in, hearing what everyone else says, and then having the last word. There is a process for registration addressing the panel, and we want some order to that, so that's why I'm going through that process. But I am happy to hear from others who aren't listed, so long as I hear now, we can put them in the minutes. Doesn't sound like it. Our usual practice is to allow individual submitters and members of the public 3 minutes to speak. That time may be extended with the agreement of the panel up to a maximum of 5 minutes. Once speakers other than the applicant have spoken, then we'll ask any applicant's representative to speak, who may choose to respond to the issues raised. I think our procedures do allow a maximum time of up to 15 minutes for that process. Both those addresses of people speaking for or against an application or applicant's representatives may involve some questions of the panel, so I'll check on that before we move on to the next speaker. As the panel's been provided with copies of submissions, both for, against, and on behalf of applicants, including some late submissions, there's no need to read from the submissions, and ask you to keep to the time that I've mentioned. After hearing from the speakers for all those 3 items, the panel will close the meeting and we will deliberate and make decisions on those 3 items, and they will be published along with the reasons for the decisions in the coming week, hopefully well within the week. There is one other matter for electronic determination, which is also published on Council's website, and that will occur at the same period. The panel's decisions for this meeting, as well as the audio recording of this meeting now, should be available on the Council's website well within 7 days, as mentioned. The decisions of the panel are by majority vote. As there's an even number, the chair does have a casting vote if needed. Applications will be either approved, refused, or deferred. It's possible the panel may make a different decision than recommended by council staff. If a matter is deferred, it's also possible the application may be determined electronically or by council staff without another public meeting. That is up to the panel, if that course is followed. So the first speaker, Mr. Sloan, just before inviting Mr. Sloan to address us and unmute yourself, I'll just ask if council staff have any matters they want to raise in relation to the reports. I'm not expecting there is. We have had some late correspondence, but in case there's any late matters that relate to the recommendations, happy to hear now.
No, Jason.
No? Okay, great, thanks. In that case, I'll ask Mr. Sloan to address us regarding Peel Street, 11 Peel Street at Toukley. Mr. Sloan, are you with us?
Yes, have you got me? Everyone can hear me okay?
I can hear you, thank you.
Yep, got good bandwidth here at Toukley, which is great. Okay. Obviously, my name's Mark Sloan. Excuse me if I look to the side because I'm going through some jogging notes. So I've been a resident here now for 20 years in this particular address. I live approximately 150 metres from the proposed development application, and I'd just like to point out I have no conflict of interest with this property at all. I'd like to thank the LPP for its time, and particularly for the council with dealing with the DA and reaching their conclusion that is, in my opinion, and a lot of my neighbours, in the interest of the local community. Publicly, I would like to thank the large amount of people who took the time to also object to this DA. It makes me proud of my community, and it makes me understand that people really do care that live around me. So I'll get on to the facts now. I won't deal with emotion anymore. This is a low density area of mainly pensioners and young families. And this development application does not fit the character of the area. When I first moved in this street, I was the only one that had children. Everyone else in this street was a pensioner, and it was a very quiet street. Obviously now, as those people sadly pass on, we do get younger families, and which is great. But that's just basically what this area is. It's elderly people or young families. Yes, I'm concerned for the homelessness that's happening now and the affordability housing that we need to solve, but it cannot be to the detriment of an area or the community, and the solution must fit the area. This DA would be far more suited to me in a suburb of Sydney, close to the rail network, where employment and welfare assistance for these people, which Toukley has none of. So for me, this is just far too dense in the population that they're trying to put here, doesn't suit it. Toukley is already doing its fair share to provide affordable housing, and already I see it affecting our community values. And to add this DA would not help by adding a large number of unemployed men who are by the developer's own admission, drifters, people who have no ties to the community. I have concerns over the lack of communal areas, indoor but mainly outdoor, of this development. This could lead to the tenants using the area in the lakefront that is called Osborne Park.
Mr. Sloan, have you got much left on your speech? I think we might be approaching the 3 minutes.
Yeah, just a little bit, if that's okay.
How much?
Probably about a page.
Right, okay.
No,
Try,
about a minute.
If you can try and not necessarily read every word and make the key points to the
Yep, okay, right.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so basically we've got a park down the road that's often used by children who are unaccompanied by adults, and also a lot of elderly people walk their dogs along that area. So we really don't want a lot of people using it as their sort of communal area from this submission. I challenge the submission that Ms Stubbs placed, that this is a high density, low socioeconomic area. This people is mainly pensioners. That's who the people on welfare are in this area. They're not people who are unemployed. I note the DA has very little alterations being done to it to convert it to a boarding house. And even then, even if you gave this property all the bells and whistles, a lift and all that, it would still come down to the density, the number of people that would be in this building in such a low density populated area. So you could upgrade it to the hilt, but it would still mean a lot of people of low socioeconomic value and community values that don't have the facilities that they need. If this development application required an on-site manager by the developer's own admission, this is not the type of residence that we want in multiple numbers that need to be maintained. The police already said, I went and spoke to them, and they've got concerns. Once again, I'll just conclude and thank the council and the LPP for their time, and I hope that the LPP will agree with the council's recommendation. What we really need is for someone to upgrade this nursing home for its intended use, so my 84-year-old parents can go and stay there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Any other questions from the panel? So the comments you made about none of the future residents being members of the local community and all being men, where are you getting that information from?
That was from the submission. They actually identified that these people mainly will be men, and that they even used the term drifters. So they're people that won't have ties to the community, and probably never had ties to a community. They don't understand what the values are.
Okay.
We've noticed that some people are, since a lot of this affordable housing has happened, there's a lot more graffiti around the area. We see the crackers going off, which means that...
No, sorry, it wasn't an invitation to make more points. I was just asking where you got the information from. Thanks.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Sloan. Next, we have Karen Kelly. I'm not sure, Karen, if you're out there. Doesn't sound like it. You might be on mute, but I will check in with you just before we get to the applicant's representative. In case...
Yeah, I'm on mute. That's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
3 minutes, thanks.
All right. My name is Karen Kelly. I am speaking today in favour of the application. I am the operator of the adjacent retirement village. I am aware that many of the neighbours are worried about the application. I believe that this opposition is founded in ignorance. Several people have contacted my office as well as writing to me to agitate for my support in opposing the application. And in my opinion, these people need to mind their own business. This application is not unlawful. There is a dire need for affordable housing in the Central Coast Council area. The New South Wales Government has enacted several pieces of legislation to encourage new generation boarding houses, but perceptions of what this means, rather than the reality, cause residents to oppose every application just because it contains the words boarding house. A modern boarding house is not at all that dissimilar to a block of flats. The suggestions by those opposing the application that the building will become a den of iniquity and that women and children will be unsafe to walk the streets are ludicrous. The people who will occupy this facility already live in this council area. Denying the application just means that there will be fewer housing choices for the residents. The building has sat unoccupied for several years. When it was for sale, I inspected this building. Homeless people had been using it as a squat and the interior had been vandalised. Because windows were broken to gain access to the building, water was allowed to enter the building during a storm, causing damage. This building no longer meets the building code for it to be used as a nursing home. It will never be used in that capacity again. Anyone who thinks that will happen as a consequence of them opposing the current application is dreaming. The best thing for the community that can happen to this building is that it be repurposed for some lawful activity. To bring it back to a habitable state will require a lot of capital investment. The applicant is prepared to do that. The applicant successfully operates 4 or 5 other similar facilities in New South Wales and Tasmania. Rather than meddling, the residents should be grateful that a reputable business is prepared to invest in Toukley. We are in the start of a deep recession. This is not the time to discourage reputable businesses from investing in the local area. Because of these reasons, I encourage the council to approve the application.
The first time I've caught myself with the mute on. It usually happens 3 times. So thanks for that 3 minutes. You must have practiced that speech. I do appreciate your timeliness in consideration to the panel. I'll ask if the panel have any questions of Ms. Kelly.
No, thank you.
Any other panel members?
No.
Ms. Kelly, I guess, look, you're supporting it, others don't support it. I guess everyone's got their right to state whatever their views are, but you did mention that people should mind their own business and not meddling. Is that because you don't think that people have a right to have a view about development in an area, or you just
No, it's because they contacted my office during business hours to harass me for holding a different view than them.
Right, okay. Right. Fair enough. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll hear from David Harris, MP, member for Wyong next.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I acknowledge that I am talking today from Gadigal land? I'm down here at Parliament House. And can I also signal that I don't normally talk on these issues. I have put in a written submission, but I've been asked by members of the community to talk on their behalf because they didn't feel that they were able to. And I would like to put a different perspective, given that you've got my written submission, and that is on behalf of potential residents of this facility. And I also support Council's recommendation on the issue. So just having a roof over your head is not enough. Accommodation should be dignified and improve living outcomes. I've discussed this development with many social housing providers that provide locally, and they see it as being problematic and very difficult to manage. In fact, they said they wouldn't be interested in managing something on this scale. The proposal takes a minimalist approach to an existing structure. It is not specifically designed to advantage future occupants. The previous use had appropriate sized rooms and associated facilities because it was supported by a large number of staff, including cleaners and cooks, etc. The current proposal has room sizes which by nature force people to use common areas. Conceivably, that means up to 30 people sharing these common areas at any one time during maximum occupation. It's important for the panel to consider the social implications of such an arrangement. And my research has shown that where you have a situation where large numbers of people have small rooms and shared facilities, kitchens, bathrooms, common rooms, etc., it was found to raise the risk of anxiety disorders and mood disorders by 21% and 39% respectively. So clearly, when we're looking at these types of developments, we should be looking to improve the lives of people, improve their opportunities, not create places that make their lives worse. Clearly, a more reasonable approach would be to increase room sizes, decrease tenants, and create a development which more appropriately considers residents' living conditions. Now, the change in the SEP for R2, and I know this is R1 zone, but R2 now says you can only have 12 units in a boarding house. there is not a lot of difference other than the fact this used to be a large facility that would give credence to having 72 rooms, given the change in the set for an R2 zoning. The social impact report itself says the scale of the development of 72 rooms, total capacity 95 people, has the potential to cluster a considerable number of very low income households into an already disadvantaged local area with vulnerable and frail aged neighbours. I believe this development does not address any of those issues. It is taking advantage of an existing building and trying to develop a facility that has not really got the best interests of the people who would live there, including how sound would be managed between rooms, how people would be able to cohabitate these areas and use facilities in a positive and meaningful way that doesn't encourage conflict. I thank the panel for their time.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Questions from the panel?
No,
Yes,
thank
I
you.
have a question.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, given that the owner is prepared to spend the money to meet all the council's requirements, decreasing room size and decreasing the residents, would you then support it?
I would support a facility. So at Tukley, a housing provider has just opened a very high quality facility, which anyone would be proud to live in. In that case, if the facility was great, and the number of people was greatly reduced, I'm talking about under 40, then there may be a case. You'd have to obviously see the plans, etc. But I think this is taking opportunity of an existing facility and taking advantage of that, not really looking after the best interests of who might have to live there.
And yet, as you're aware, of course I'm aware, that it is Labour Party policy to encourage these social housing.
Absolutely, but social housing should take very much into account the dignity, the mental health, and the livability. We don't say that you should create large, intensive buildings just so someone should have a house over their head. I'm currently part of an inquiry into homelessness, and even the homeless people said there are some places that they referred to that even they wouldn't go to. So you've got to make sure the development, and I've seen this, they're only proposing to spend about $500,000. That's about the cost of a house in the area, less than the cost of a house in the area. They're going to have thin walls. Some of the rooms are actually smaller than spec, and they will have shared facilities. And we're not talking about 20 people or 10 people or 30 people. We're talking about between 70 and 90 people having to coexist. And right across my electorate, my office deals with on a daily basis the conflict between residents who are trying to exist in developments which have common areas, people with mental health, other afflictions. And I don't think we should be assigning people to that sort of development. It should be quality, well managed, and looking at low numbers of people in a way that they can live in a decent way.
Thanks, Mr. Harris. You've made that answer clear. Any other questions?
Mr. Harris, as the local member, just wondering whether you can give any insight into the demand for a facility of this size, please.
Okay, so anyone who lives in the area knows there's already been a number of developments approved. The most recent one, which is currently under construction in Tukley, is 40 rooms. And I thought that was probably right on the edge of what you would look at doing. The ones at Canton Beach are units. I think it's 12 units along Canton Beach, which will win design awards. They are absolutely fantastic. This is not about social housing. It's not about affordable housing. It's about developers taking an interest in properties, spending the least amount of money, honestly, possible, and then trying to put that out to the market. As I said, I've never spoken before on any of these issues, but this one, when I looked at it, I've spoken to other housing providers, I've spoken in detail to the community, and I felt compelled to speak on this particular case.
Mr. Harris, is there a demand for this facility? That's what I'm asking you. Is there homeless people in and around the community there that would create a demand for this facility?
Well, there's homeless people right across the Central Coast, as there is the state. But as I said in the inquiry we've just done, even homeless people are saying that some places they wouldn't go into because there's the opportunity for intimidation, there's the opportunity for mental health issues to have provide conflict. Police currently attend many places around that area trying to deal with those issues. In very short-term way, there may be, but not on that scale, absolutely not on that scale. 90 people trying to exist, sharing common facilities is a recipe for disaster. And I've said that publicly, I'm prepared to say it, because I've seen across my electorate where it's already occurring. So this isn't what might happen, I'm telling you what already happens. Strathaven is a perfect example.
Thanks, Mr. Harris. Any other questions?
Yeah, just still with Mr. Harris, have the police been in contact with you this, or have you been in discussions with the local police about this proposal?
I have had a informal discussion with the police. They did have concerns. They attend, for example, another facility in Wyong on a regular basis, which is set up in a similar way, but had developed a different way. It was a resort style that turned into a boarding house, and it has significant problems which they have to attend all the time. They did have concerns that a facility of this size would create similar problems.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Sandra Pazaradis. Sorry about the mispronunciation. I understand Sandra mightn't be with us, but in case you're there and on mute or joined us late, unmute yourself and let us know. No? I don't think we have Ms. Parazadis. So next I have Charles Ahadi speaking on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Ahadi, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and dear members of the panel. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding our development application at 51 Pill Street, Tukli. My name is Charles Ahadi. I'm the owner of 51 Pill Street and all other properties in our portfolio. My family and I own Serenin Pty for the last 25 years. I would like to bring to panel attention a few unclear concerns raised by other neighbors, but few was raised now with Mr. Harris, which I come to it. These items includes what kind of people are going to live at 51 Police Street, how will the security and safety of the tenant will be achieved, how the site will be managed, will it be an on-site tenant or a fully paid position, what assurance is there that the boarding house is not going to be a heaven for the drug user, dealer, and criminal potentially, like other boarding house, as was mentioned again, that the community have experienced? What measure is in place to stop thieves or unwanted people entering the site and accessing the building and rooms? What mechanism in the place for the emergency situation? How entering and exiting the car park will work and how this will impact the neighborhood? A brief explanation about who I am, and I'm going to make money out of this, selling or not, and how our company is or who. I answered them in order 1 to 9. And if time permits or the panel permits, my general manager, which is my son, our general manager would like to give a few words if the time permits. Our occupant number 1, our occupant could be your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife, nurses, teacher, contractor, student. These people will be offered the modern, a decent room to occupy and enjoy our building and call it their home. All occupants will be interviewed by an on-site experienced manager and must provide a police check. If they are deemed to meet our standards, then they will be provided with a room to stay. Number 2, 51 Police Street will have 34 cameras running 24/7, covering all indoor and outdoor areas except inside rooms. This property, along with all other properties, is managed from a command center in Sydney a 3-person shift based at our property and 807 camera rolling all our property across Australia. Number 3, 51 Police Street will have full-time paid experienced manager who will reside on site accommodation, vehicle, and all paid expenses. On top of this, there will be casual assistant staff to assist with daily duties. On top of that, the site will be controlled from command center and watched 24/7. Number 4, anyone entering 51 Police Street for the purpose of inquiring for a room must be suitable. These are the measures that we will put in place. 1, or A, the occupant themselves will be thoroughly interviewed by an experienced manager. B, the occupant will be required to have a current police check. A 2 weeks maximum period will be given to apply and provide this to us. Upon approval, all occupant detail and boarding house rule will be thoroughly explained with the on-site manager, by the on-site manager. Answer to number 5. Along with the CC camera, no one can enter the site without a guest card. No one can enter the building without the access card. And these locks have got a system, the history report. It can be reported, can be accessed by management and the police. Only and only the guests can access their room. In simple terms, only resident can enter the property, only resident can enter the building, only resident can enter their room. Number 6, we have a full-time manager on site 24/7 with support staff, a command center monitoring the site 24/7 on 8-hour shift. Any issue occur, we will address this immediately as is a stand with all other property. Please refer the traffic in the number 7. Please refer the traffic management. The contracted person has worked with the RTA for a number of years. Number 8, who am I? Am I going to make money from this building or not? I'm a 60-year-old. I have left my place of birth with a bag. I have arrived in Australia in 1984, and this country has given me a chance to grow. My family and I have worked very hard for many years to create this company. I'm trying to create a place that provides all those who reside in to call it a place to home, for them to be home. And I come back to assure the council and the panel, I will not be selling and I will not making money from this property. This property stays in my hand as long as I live. Number 8, just brief explanation of a few of our own, but what we have done in the last 3 years. We are not here to make money past the bar. 1, 16-room boarding house, 388 Pacific Highway, 33-room motel at 807 Pacific Highway, Gordon. Complete renovation of civic motor in Cara, completely. Davenport Holiday Park with 80 power sites, 16 ensuite, 27 permanent, 25 parked on cabin. On top of the existing, we have lodged the DA for 115 one-bedroom cabin in September 2019, and we completed and got our OC on 5th of February. Again, I'll come to them, Mr. Harris respond. On the day that was the CC occupation certificate was given, the representative of federal government inspected our cabin, and on that day was ordered 19 people to be removed from the Big 4 caravan park to come to our cabin to live. And constantly in the next 2 to 3 weeks, all entire cabin was occupied. I repeat, all entire new cabins was occupied by the people, which was approved by federal government, inspected our properties. I'm sorry, it'll be another minute or so. At the same time I bought 51 Police Street. I bought 150 at Brilliant Street in Bathurst, which is 96-room student accommodation from Charles Sturt University. This property, we put the DA on the same time as we put the DA for Tukley. The DA was approved, the CC was approved, and 24th of July, we got our occupation certificate, sir. We got our occupation certificate, and building occupied now by the people that are contracted, they are a student, they are nurses in that building right now. You can verify with our on-site paid manager. There is on-site paid manager. I hope you will approve this DA and will allow us to do the same with the building to uplift its, to be manifest its beauty. I know that the DA we put is not very clear because our architect got sick, but if you allow, if you permit us, we have got a video to show what we have done in all the property we have upgraded and completed. Thank you for the time that I extended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahadi. I understand you wanted to invite your son to make some additional comments.
If time permits, he is the general manager of the property, and I do have a video if time permits, because I know the council officer was requesting some information to be provided by architect, but architect got sick, he had some issue. He had,
how long, I think we're going to find it very difficult to see that video just looking at your screen. How long is your video and how long is Mr. your son's address?
2.5 minutes or so. I can move the camera closer, but it's up to the panel.
This shows the extent of the renovation we went through, the bathhouse, which is the late one, and again shows part of what we did in Davenport, which I can again repeat it. 3 representatives from federal government, Canberra.
No, sorry. So I'm not inviting you to make more points. I'm just asking some facts. How long is the video and how long have you got to speak?
Sure. So the video is about 2.5 minutes. And the talk that the speech that I had was about the same 2.5.
Can I just suggest you have your 2.5 minute talk and then just say what's in the video? Because I think we're going to find it very difficult to see.
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Thank you.
No problem. So I'd just like to begin by thanking Charles for allowing me to speak to the panel today. So my name is Patrick Ahadi. I'm the general manager for Serenin Group, and I've been with the company for almost 10 years. My initial role was to manage a 175-bed, 96-room boarding house in Greenwich, New South Wales, which I did successfully for 6 years. And at the time, the building was extremely run down with the wrong type of tenants you would imagine, but with great planning and great execution, we brought that up to a prestigious and attribute to the community, really. So what I found most effective in dealing with buildings of this nature and size is that there must be a solid team of managers and operators behind just for the business to work succinctly. At Greenwich, there was one on-site manager who was paid, as well as myself, and we had an array of casual staff that worked daily and nightly, just taking care of duties and the tenants and occupants that were there. If ever there was an issue that occurred, that was dealt with immediately. So a lot of the problems that were mentioned in regards to some of the issues or circumstances that guests may have, this was immediately addressed by us, and those problems were eradicated almost the same day. Continuing from there, it's a standard with all of the properties that I manage personally, that the rooms and the building remain spotless. A lot of boarding house providers, they do these new generation boarding houses, and the management is grossly undermanaged. That's the reason we have a lot of these issues that occur. And on top of that, the cleanliness and the way the building is presented shows the tenants that these operators, they need to operate correctly. And it basically demonstrates to the community that this is an appropriate asset for the suburb of Tukli. Following on from there, Charles mentioned a few of the properties that we do manage. What I would lastly like to bring to the attention of the panel, I know my time is finished, is, as Charles said, that this isn't just the money grab. What we really try to do with all our properties, which you can research through any mechanism you find, is that we offer the correct rate for what we provide. A lot of providers grossly overcharge their occupants. They do not include services. There's a lot of hidden fees. We are straightforward with all our occupants, and that's why they always give us raving reviews about the properties we have, the standards, and the way that we manage it. Thank you.
If I may allow just 1 second, if I may, please.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Harris stated 72 room. That's not correct. It's 63, including manager, 63. Mr. Harris reported that is a communal room. There is none. Every room has got its own kitchen and bathroom. Every room, there is no shared facility whatsoever. There is no shared facility, Mr. Harris, is in DA. All room, they have got their own kitchenette and kitchen and bathroom. There is none. The only shared facility it is for the laundry, which is number of them provided.
Oh, Rachel speaking.
If you look at this,
I was just going to say that's fine. It's okay for you to talk about the issues rather than who raised
Yeah,
them.
would you be able to try and join again? I just
Thank you.
about to let you into the meeting. Would you be able to try again?
I'm hearing someone speaking. I'm not sure who that is. Okay, look, I might just pause here and check in with panel members. Questions from the applicants' representatives. First, Mr. Ahadi and the General Manager of the company.
Yes, I've got a question.
Mr. Mitchell.
Are you, clearly the council have put down certain conditions here. Are you prepared to spend the money and comply with all of council's conditions to actually make this possible?
I didn't hear you, sir.
Okay. Are you prepared to meet all the council's specifications to make this possible?
I'll do my best, sir. Again, as I explained, the architect got sick because to give cancer, but frequently when he got better, we have prepared a better plan. And furthermore, I have reduced another 3 room, which is making 60 now, but because this day has got to go to panel, hopefully get approved. If it didn't get approved, then I'll present the other plan, which is everything, and I'm prepared to spend the money needed. My purpose is to create a nice so-called home. That's my purpose. My purpose is not to make the building and sell it. I am not interested in selling this property as long as I live. That's the promise I can give, and I can put in the written or whatever condition council would
Thanks,
like.
Mr. Hardy. Other questions?
Mr. Perica, is it possible I can ask a question?
No.
Okay.
Panel questions times. Thanks. This isn't a question or answer town hall debate. Thanks. I hope you understand that, Mr. Sloan. Thanks. Other panel questions?
Yes, Chair. Sue Francis here. I'm looking at some of your plans, Mr. Ahadi, sorry. Some of them don't seem to have cooking facilities. Bathrooms, yes, but not necessarily cooking. Can you confirm that?
For your confirmation, Sue, every single room they have got cooking facility. Every single room they do have. Some of the room, the kitchens are 2.4 meters. Some of the rooms, the big room, they have got a L-shaped kitchen, which is more than 2.4 meters. But every single room, they do have cooking facility. Cooking facility, they will have a cooktop and they will have a convection microwave, which you can do the same as you can do in any oven. Will be provided.
Okay, that may well be so, but it's not shown on all your plans. Your plans are not consistent.
I'm sorry, I said the architect got sick and hasn't put the plan the way I like to be put.
Right. How does council deal with something where we don't have full proper plans?
Well, you can put the condition there. Is there any cooking facility or not?
So there is proper plans. You might not. Are you looking at you might be looking at the redacted plans. There are full sets of plans, and there are kitchenettes in every room.
I'm looking at some rooms on the bottom plan where it doesn't actually show a kitchen. It might show something that's a bench, but it doesn't show a kitchen.
Okay, it shows a kitchen sink and like a cooktop with 2 burners.
On the lower ground on the northern side?
Yes. Are you talking about the accessible room? No, room 60?
I'm talking about the ones on the northern side, not the accessible side. And it doesn't matter. It might, if they're intended to have them, that's fine.
We can check those plans in the after the meeting.
Yeah.
Other questions from panel members?
Oh, the other thing I was going to say is you seem to have indicated on the plans only one community room on the top floor. Would you not think there should be a communal area on each floor?
Again, Sue, The plan I provided was three communal plan, but it was suggested as complying with the CP, you need only one. But I'm quite happy if that is the view of the council to accommodate on each floor communal room. I've got no issue with it.
Okay, thank you.
And I've already put that into place. That's what I said. I have reduced from 63 to 60, not 72, 60. That's what I created another two communal room. I'm trying to make this work and the work the best is possible. I'm not there to grab as many rooms as I can make.
No, we understand. I think there's different numbers because there's amendments made after lodgement is my understanding. So it's not surprising there's different numbers around. Other questions from the panel? I've got one, and I apologise for noise in the background. My neighbour's doing some work, so not much I can do about that. You mentioned the CCTV camera being manned in Sydney 24 hours. What's the logic behind that, and what's the relation? It's 3 questions. What's the logic of that rather than on-site manager? How's the communication work between the command centre in Sydney and on-site? And what's the process for choosing an appropriate manager?
Well, I can explain, but my English, as you can see, is not so great. I leave it to my son to explain. Please.
So if Charles wants to add anything, he can. But basically, the thought process behind it was that our property here in Gordon is managed 24/7, and for that reason, the cameras are always visible to them during those periods. So the on-site manager who will be paid and residing in Toukley or in Bathurst or in any of the other properties that we do manage, they may period where they're not observing what's happening and issues may occur. So for that reason, the command center is placed, if there is a problem, to contact the manager, contact us as the general manager and director, or contact the local authorities to have that issue addressed. Yeah, and this is mainly just...
Why not have the CCTV camera and the surveillance available on the site as well?
It's available in all sites as well as the command center. So on site it's available, and yeah.
Mr. Chair, we have got 34 camera in our plan being installed on the Toukley. And the command center, in case something happens, in case the manager of emergency on, somebody watching all our property across Australia, not only Toukley, all our property across Australia. So we are double safeguarding to prevent unwanted guests or criminal attending to our property. I can go to detail and take the measure that we took about the people that use drug or deal with drug, or people they start to abuse the system. I can go detail, but I don't want
to... Just answer the questions would be most helpful. Thank you. And sorry, I don't think the question about how you choose that manager was answered.
Yeah, so basically, majority of the time, the manager will be assisted by myself or another experienced manager during the first month to 2 months to see can they manage it. They have to have prior experience in manager building of this nature, especially for what's proposed. It can't just be any tenant or random individual. They have to have some form of experience. And then over the month or 2, I will train them in the systems that we use, the property management system, the occupancy agreement, the things necessary, the boarding house rules, if there is an issue, how we go about dealing with that issue. And yeah, there's a rigorous training process, which I've done with all the properties we have that do long-term and short-term accommodation.
And that person is on site responsible for managing the people that are there 24/7, so they stay inside the room.
That's correct. So all properties have one on-site manager. They have myself as the general manager to report to, and then using their own preference, they will select a few casual staff to assist with maybe reception hours or different duties that they may have. That way there's a team of individuals on site. It's never just one individual dealing with this many amount of occupants. There's different people they can rely upon as well. But there is always one that resides in every property that we own. 24/7, they reside on site and they're a paid position.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have Ms. Pazaridis. You were late to the meeting, unfortunately, so it's all out of order. It's unfortunate because we like to hear from people and have the applicant respond, but I'll allow you some time to address us, and then I'll also allow if there's any matters of facts that the applicant wants to respond to.
Jason, can I ask a question, please? The applicant,
yeah, sure.
You will have noted in the council report that one of the reasons for refusal is that the development isn't consistent with the character of the area. and that's a requirement. So council or planning panel, we cannot approve this unless we're satisfied that this development's consistent with the character of the area. So I was just wondering, in terms of the design, the external design, you're not looking to do anything in the architectural plans to the external design of this building, and the character of that area is undoubtedly low density residential around the site. So I'm just wondering if you could just respond to how this development is consistent with the character of the area, please.
If you could stick to the question, that'd be good, about the character and the physical characteristics of the building. Thanks.
As I explained, the architect got sick and he hasn't truly presented, or actually hasn't tried to sell what we are doing there. If we be able to have a computer imaging to show you what will be, entire facade will be upgraded. Entire outside of the building will be upgraded. It is pipe running everywhere, duct running everywhere. That will not be left as it is. So the entire facade outside of the building will be uplifted. Regarding the complying with the site, there are multiple units at our right. To the left of this is our building. To the right of our building, when you're looking at the Peel Street, is the empty land, and the top from Alice Parade is the aged care facility, and the top is the 2-story. And when you look at it from the back from Alice Parade, you see that 1-story. And when you look at it from Peel Street, it look 3-story. So I can't see why is not within the character of the building, because to our right, about 20 or 30 meters away, is 2-story multi-dwelling units.
Rob, thank you. Rather than inviting questions to the applicants, I do, they can be asked from the panel, but I wouldn't mind hearing from Ms. Pazaridis. You're still there? I hope you pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Good. Yeah, you have 3 minutes, Ms. Pazaridis.
Okay, not a problem. Without getting too personal, I do believe that the intended purpose does not fit in well with the culture on Peel Street in Toukley. It's primarily elderly people. There is not much to do, and we're trying to get more younger families in to lift it up and promote more, I guess, more family, but also to respect and take care of the elders that are there. And I truly don't think that the magnitude of this boarding house fits in well with its location on that particular street and in our culture of Toukley. Although I do think it is good to welcome everybody, I don't think that size, I'm just worried. I just think it's too large and there's not a lot for these people to be doing. Unemployment is not high. We're trying to raise the medium up. It's a low SES area. We're trying to cater for the elderly. And we also have other boarding houses and cheaper, affordable housing being built within a 5-kilometre radius. We've got Canton Beach. We've got another one in Toukley. There's a couple of more nearby already submitted to council. I'm just wondering, when does it stop? How much more can we cater for in our tiny little island? And if the proposal was for a smaller amount, I would probably not object, to be quite honest. But that number is just extraordinarily high. There's too many rooms and not enough for them to do. So I just don't think it fits in our character and the culture of our lovely little island. It's struggling as it is. It's not the right demographics, and we're already trying to cater already. How much more can we possibly do? Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Pazaridis. I do appreciate you being succinct. Thank you for that. I'll ask if there's any questions of Ms. Pazaridis on the panel. No, I don't believe there are any matters of fact that the applicant needs to respond to there. But I'm happy if you do want to make a quick comment in reply.
I was just the only question, sorry, that
No,
I have.
sorry, I was talking to the applicant there.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're all right. No problem. Okay, not, we'll go back to questions from the panel then of the applicant, if there are any.
Mr. Chair,
You're back on. I think I can see you speaking, Mr. Hardy. You're on mute.
yeah, again, I'd like to strongly emphasize my purpose of creating a boarding house here is not money grabbing. I want this to be absolutely clear, and I have no intention of selling this if it's got approved. And I have all the attention in the world to give a place to call home for the people that they needed.
Mr. Hardy, we're just actually, I'm not asking you to repeat points you've made previously. I don't mean to be rude and cut over you. We're just going through a question process at the moment. So
just one point.
I know you're looking to reiterate points you've made before, but I'm just checking if there's questions from the panel. No? Okay.
Comment about an earlier question.
No, there's no questions from the public. This is not a question and answer town hall debate. I'm checking if there's questions from the panel. I've got one last question, which is you mentioned there was services that were being provided to people residing on the site. Can you just elaborate on that?
Basically, services, what I generally meant was that most boarding houses, they may charge separately for water, Wi-Fi, all these other utilities. That is all inclusive in the rates that we offer for such a great price. That's the point I was trying to make. The other thing as well is that we do offer, if necessary, cleaning of the facilities or properties or rooms, just additional things if necessary the guest requires. That's another service.
Thank you. Any last questions from the panel?
Yes, I've just been having a look at Canton Beach Boarding House. Is the applicant familiar with this boarding house? And if so, would they be able to create the exterior in very much the same as they do there?
Are you familiar with it?
Are you familiar with Canton Beach Boarding House?
I didn't get your question, sir.
We have been mentioning Canton Beach Boarding House. Have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't seen boarding house, but I have gone through the plan that I have put there. This plan is fully complying with
No.
But I haven't seen.
Okay.
No, sir, I haven't seen.
Okay. If you look at the plan, you can see it online. If you are able to recreate the exterior look of that boarding house, do you think you could do that?
After I looked at it, I'll try my best. But you have got a building structurally, this building is magnificent, very strong. Externally, need uplifting. Internally,
yes,
we need to uplift. That's for sure. Again, if I had a chance, I show the video of what I have done in Battersea, Davenport, or the Cara, then council would be very familiar. But I will do my best to uplift as much as I can.
There does not seem to be a lot of extra you need to do in order to upgrade that to that look.
I will look at it, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that video is about another property. I'm not sure that's going to add a lot to our discussion or understanding. I know you spent a bit of time talking about other properties, but we are looking at this development proposal on this site. Are there any last questions from the panel? Okay, I'll take silence as a no. There's none from me. That being the case, we'll move on from that item and move to the second item. People are welcome to stay and listen in, but there won't be a decision made in this public forum. We will, as I mentioned up front, close and deliberate after the meeting and publish the decision and reasons subsequently in the coming days, within the coming week. So thanks for your attendance and assistance to the panel. We'll move on to the second item, which is 15.
Can I, Mr. Chair, acknowledge that the time you gave me, extra time you gave me, thank you for the extra time you gave me again.
Thanks, Mr. Hardy, no problem. Okay, I believe we have a speaker for this item, which is the applicant's representative, which is Clayton Vitano. Are you with us, Mr. Vitano?
I'm here, Chair.
Okay, we're happy to hear from you. I think you mentioned you may need more than the 3 minutes or up to 10 minutes. We're happy to use that time, or you're happy for you to use that time if you need to. We have had your late submissions, or, you know, submission not necessarily from you, but on behalf of the applicant, we've received that and read it, so you can take that as given. But I'll invite you now to address us on your issues and what you'd like to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I won't take long. It'll probably be around about 5 minutes or so. So my name is Clay Vitano. I'll be speaking on behalf of the applicant, Tony Vitano, and as part owner of the property and as a member of the public. Believe this is also a matter for the public interest also. Firstly, in regards to the carport, we agree that the roof pitch is a little high, but we did propose a lower roof pitch of 10 degrees, which would have dramatically reduced any visual dominance. This carport will be nestled lower into the natural ground level and will be screened by boundary fencing with vegetation also. When you compare this open carport, and don't forget it's open, to the enclosed double garage next door that's also in the front setback, you can see that the proposal would only keep with the new rhythm of the street, therefore being consistent with the streetscape with reduced visual dominance. Secondly, and in regards to this rear retaining wall, it's been proposed to have this inside the boundary to not burden the neighbour. The proposed height of this fence above this retaining wall will only be to the vegetation height that was there previously before it was cut down. The neighbour actually still has a tall part of fencing there at the moment, and will only be proposed to be at this height and reduce lower towards the rear of the property. The maximum height of this retaining wall at the highest point would only be 850 millimetres. We could reduce that down to 600. Thirdly, in regards to single and only submission from Mr. and Mrs. Hogston and number 13 Lynette Crescent, which is the adjacent property. There is a comment on this proposed retaining wall stating that under no circumstances would I agree to it being positioned on or inside my boundary. To do so would include me in future maintenance and construction issues together with costs. The issue with this is that they have actually built an illegal retaining wall over the boundary and on our land, which we are burdened with. Furthermore, Mr. and Mrs. Hodgson have also stated that we suffer a major loss of sunlight. However, they've actually had vegetation at proposed fence site for the last 6 years that we've been here. Also, we could possibly build a significant structure in the backyard, such as a secondary dwelling, which would have a small effect on solar access. That could be approved under a CDC. We cannot see how this fence could have any impact at all on solar access, also considering the openness of the rear yards. The submission has also stated we're seeking a carport variation against the building code. It was also stated that the carport is not compatible with adjacent developments. They are an adjacent development and they have a fully enclosed double garage within the front setback that currently dominates the streetscape. We're only proposing an open carport that keeps with this new rhythm and actually provides harmony, so this double garage does not stand out as much. The above submission is the only submission with the other 7 notified neighbours having no objection. Council considered to give merit to this only submission. We've also provided documentation that demonstrates how we've met the objectives. The main objective is being compatible with adjacent developments, which we are. Finally, I'd like to say that this was a perfectly good DA that has been recommended for refusal. Apart from the carport and the retaining wall, the rest is complying development. I guess questions need to be raised as to why conditional consent or a total or partial consent was not recommended on the basis that it would be fair to the applicant to grant consent to development that would otherwise be compliant development. By refusing the entire development, the applicant is to pay for additional costs for a CDC. I would also like the panel to consider that Council has advised the applicant by 2 separate emails that a significant carport is generally supported with a reduced front setback if a rear or side access is not available. We do not have a rear or side access. Again, it needs to be questioned as to why this consent was recommended for refusal in any way, shape or form. We cannot even knock down an internal wall. We cannot build a pool for the kids. We cannot enjoy an entertaining area with friends and family. To conclude, we are seeking a conditional or partial consent for the lower roof pitch and for the carport, and lowering the retaining wall only if need be. That would be a fair outcome. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Vitano, thank you for that. Being clear and not taking up your full potential time, appreciate that. I'll just check with my fellow panel members for any questions of Mr. Vitano. Any questions from Jeff Mitchell, Stephen Leadley, or Sue Francis? Okay, I have a question then. Do you accept that I mean, the location of carports or garages or parking generally is, you know, generally it's different across different councils, but there's some consistency in that. And from my observations in a lot of different councils, that approach of favouring parking to the rear because of the visual impacts of garaging and garage doors on the streetscape is usually preferred option number one, parking to the sides number two, parking up the rear lane probably number one. And then the last option is parking in the front setback if no other alternatives exist. Do you accept there's a difference when you have a dwelling which already has a car park structure within it? I mean, isn't there a difference between a carport for a dwelling that has no parking versus a dwelling that has parking already to provide an additional carport in the front yard? Do you see any difference or not?
Thank you, Chair. No, not in this case. East Gossip's got a 2% rise in their population growth. We have a number of secondary dwellings in the street. We have young families. We just have, it depends on the time of day, but we have a number of cars in the street, which pushes cars off the street and onto their allotment. So there's a number of cars up the street. The garbage truck has issues picking up bins if cars are on the street. So it's basically getting these additional vehicles off the street and onto an allotment where the existing garage or double garage that most people would have would be full. Most people would have one or two vehicles that would fill that spot, or they might even use it as storage. So there's an ever-growing need to provide a couple of extra spots on your allotment and not on the street. And I think it's only fair that you should be able to protect those assets as well.
So you think that everyone who has either 4 cars or 2 cars and a caravan or boat or whatever it might be has the right to park those off street, and if that means front carports in addition to garages within dwellings, then that should be allowed everywhere?
Thank you, Chair. Every application needs to be assessed on its own merit. We don't have a side or rear access, so we don't have an ability to put this carport anywhere else. So, I mean, if you look at the adjacent property, they do have the ability. They're a good example. They've got a side access, and however, they still had a double garage approved in the front setback, even though they had a side access. So it's interesting how each case is considered, but I think if any case is to be considered for a carport for this application, will be this one.
Why is that? What's so different about yours?
We don't have a side or rear access. The adjacent property does. They have the ability to actually drive down the side and access a shed down the rear. However, they still had a double garage approved in the front setback. We can't drive down the side of the house, access the rear, or we don't have a rear access.
So getting back to my question then, in scenarios where there are front setbacks that would allow additional carports, where there's dwellings that only have one street frontage, which is not uncommon, and have a single or double garage already existing and designed in the dwelling, if there's a demand within that family for extra parking or storage of other vehicles, you believe they should be, like you, allowed additional parking structures in the front yard, even if council's planning controls don't encourage that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do believe that. We submitted a Part 2 report, and we've demonstrated that there's 23 carport and garages approved or built in the immediate surrounding area. So that just goes to show that there's an increase in population, and there's an increase in vehicles, and it could be due to secondary dwellings also. And there's a current need, especially in the East Gosford area, which is close to the city, a constant need to get them off the street. So yes, I do believe there is controls, but those controls are a guide. and I believe each circumstance should be taken into account, including ours. We do have a young family with 3 young boys, which will need a car at some stage, and I think, and there's a lot of cars are parking on the council reserve as well, and I suppose it's another way of getting cars off that council reserve too.
And of those 23 in the area, how many of those are those front carports in addition to a single or double garage located within the existing dwelling?
I don't think I went to that calculation. I wouldn't be able to give you a rough assessment. I didn't, when I did that report in consultation with my wife, I don't think we considered that. We weren't going to go to that depth.
Thank you.
Mason, I've got a question, if I might.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Vitano, I noticed there's quite a fair bit of correspondence between you and council in relation to this application. And to be fair to council, I think they gave you the opportunity to amend the application in relation to that carport at the front and the retaining wall at the back and the level of fill. I haven't got it in front of me right here at the moment, but I believe I read that. Are you now saying that you would accept conditions, grant a consent and accept conditions removing the carport at the front if that was found to be unacceptable by the panel, and to move the retaining wall, the location of the retaining wall if that was found to be unacceptable by the panel, and to condition the extent of fill on the property if that was a concern of the panel?
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, certainly. I mean, the majority of works are complying development, and it's very unfair to refuse the entire development. So it's really up to council and the panel to decide, listen, what's suitable and what's not. And it's only fair that it's a conditional consent is issued with a condition with amended plans, such as removal of carport or retaining wall modification, if need be. That's only fair to a member of the community that's actually paid for this service.
Would you see that as a deferred commencement consent conditions, submitting amended plans, or conditions on an operational consent?
For this type of development, I think this could be dealt with on a conditional consent. I don't think it needs to be deferred. If council has issues with the amended plans coming back and not meeting the condition, they could defer it. There's definitely those options there. Without using those options, council is recommending to refuse the entire development. That's completely unfair. So yeah, certainly it's either conditional or deferred.
Other questions or follow-up questions, Mr. Leafley?
No, nothing.
Can I just repeat back what I'm hearing, or what I think I'm hearing, Mr. Vitano? So I guess your position is that you think it should be approved as is. I think you did mention previously, I thought you'd said that you could amend the carport to a flat roof and alternative design. But in fact, if the panel was still concerned about that, your preference would be to have some sort of approval, even disagreeing with conditions removing the carport or potentially changing levels in the rear yard. You'd prefer a conditional consent or revised plans that do that than no consent at all. Is that right? Even though you might disagree with it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's certainly correct. I think that's fair. That's a fair outcome, and it gives the panel and council to decide what how they see it and what should be included on their plans. But we're happy with a condition, whatever that condition is to be. But we certainly would like some consent for complying with, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from panel members?
No, thank you.
Okay, none from me. None from me either. None. Okay, thanks, Mr. Vitano. You might have caught up front that we'll deliberate after this meeting's closed, and then we'll make a decision as soon as we're able, and then you'll be advised as soon as those minutes are published and finalised. Thanks for assisting the panel.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you. And then the last item, we've had written submission and correspondence from the applicant's representative requesting a deferral, who unfortunately wasn't available to address the panel today. I think there was some advice about the planner being available to answer questions. It's not the panel's role, the staff's role to be chasing that up. The applicant could have made whatever arrangements for others to address us if he chose fit, but I understand there's no one who's here to address us. I'll just double check that's still the case. Okay. In that case, I'll ask if there's any questions from panel members of council staff.
No, thank you. I'm fine. Thank you very much, Chair.
Other panel members?
No, none for me.
None for me.
No? Okay. Look, I know unfortunately the applicant couldn't make it and will no doubt be anxious to find out the outcome. I don't know what that outcome will be. We haven't decided that yet, but there's a couple of comments I would make. I think that the choices before the panel are either refusal or deferral. I don't think approval is even possible for a prohibited development or a development in the absence of a clause 4.6. I'm a little surprised that an application was made in that context. But be that as it may, I don't think approval isn't any option for us. I should just say, express a personal view about deferral, because being on this panel and other panels, requests for deferral are put to panels, and it's my personal view, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the panel, that some framework needs to be considered for requests for deferral. And in my mind, there's three principles that are relevant. One is whether the issues are able to be clearly articulated and understood and able to be responded in a way that's likely to lead to a favourable outcome, or something turning into what's a concern or refusal into approval. Secondly, I think those issues, once defined, should be substantially the same development, not turn an apple into an orange, because revisions to applications or modifications or review do need to bear semblance to the original application. So it's the extent of what those concerns are that are also relevant. And then all of that also should be able to be done or resolved in a timely way. So they're just principles I'm enunciating that I think are relevant in considering requests for deferral. I'll happily put that to the panel when we discuss the matter, but I'm just mentioning that now. Otherwise, I don't have any questions of council staff, though I wouldn't mind seeking some clarification. There was commentary about arrangements being made for or the social impacts of dislocation of existing residents on the site. And I'm just seeking any clarification that might be able to be provided either now or afterwards, if not now, about the legislative link to that. Not sure.
Janice from the council planner. Yeah, in terms of the social impact of the loss of affordable housing, the site hasn't been approved as affordable housing. So in terms of the affordable housing SEP, there isn't that obligation for that direct kind of relationship between the loss of affordable housing in that context. It's more that the historical use of the site has been that caravan parks similar to this one and including this one have been utilised for affordable housing. I believe if you look at the caravan park on site currently, you'll see there are a number of long-term tenants, for example, and it's been a council position that in the past where we have situations where we're losing, a relatively large number of residential uses that have been historically operating as affordable housing, that we ask the applicant to consider what the impact of that might be, and to have at least an understanding of what available housing there is in the local area that these tenants can relocate into. That would be covered by a social impact assessment, but that hasn't been provided as part of the application.
Sorry, Chair, can I ask the follow-up question to Janice on that one? Sure. Why do you say this falls outside of the affordable rental housing SEP?
The affordable rental housing SEP, there's a provision in the affordable rental housing SEP that says if an approval has been granted through that policy, that you aren't able to amend it or remove affordable housing without going through.
I thought it was just if housing was deemed to be affordable as a function of the time frame and its rental, that you had to address the issue of whether you're losing it.
Oh, I hadn't read it that way, but I can clarify and get back to you.
Yeah,
I'd read it. Yeah. I had read it as if it was approved under that policy, then you needed to go through that process. But
No,
I can look at it. Yeah.
I believe it's if rental housing is being lost that would otherwise have fallen into the category of low rental accommodation at that time, and there's a time date, then it falls in that category. So that's something I think we might need to look at before we make any decision.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. I think there's a definition of affordable rental housing development.
There is.
And the relevant dates are 28th of January 2000. The
Correct.
first hurdle, the second hurdle is it has to have been low cost housing in the last 2 years prior to the application made. And if
Correct.
it falls within that definition and that's being lost, then those provisions of the affordable rental housing and retention of low cost housing kick into play. But I think the point you're making, Ms. Wheeler, is accurate in that I don't believe that a caravan park, if that's what it was approved as, falls within that low cost housing. I don't think, but it's worth checking anyway. But I think the response is whether it falls within it or not, the intention of those provisions of the affordable housing set for retaining low cost housing is to consider the impact of the loss and the availability of alternative accommodation elsewhere, and whether it's technically falling within the definition or not, that's still a live social issue in council's view, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, yeah, irrespective of whether or not affordable housing SEP applies, I would consider it to be, a 415 assessment consideration of social impact.
Understand that, mate. That's clear. Thank you. Any questions from others, council staff? Okay.
No, thank you.
That being the case, there's one last issue that we are considering in an electronic determination. I'll just check if the panel members have any questions of that and council staff in the public session before we close the meeting for both the public part and the electronic determination. Any questions on that change to the kitchen facilities for the tennis club from panel members?
Questions?
No, thank you.
No? Okay. That being the case, I'll declare the meeting closed at 3:22.